Hunting for Answers is a production of the Black Effect Podcast Network and iHeartRadio.
This is Hunting for Answers, and I'm your host, Hunter. Every weekday, we tell a story that should never be forgotten. So let's begin. On the evening of December 30th, 2019, a young woman was headed home in Pittsburgh. A bus driver later reported seeing her get off at her usual stop. But hours later, some of her belongings were found miles away. There was no sign of her, and nearly 7 years later, she has never been found. How did her belongings end up without her? And what happened after she got off that bus? This is the story of Tonee Marie Turner. Tonee was 22 years old and the youngest of three sisters. Her sister, Sydney Turner, described Tonee as bubbly and caring. She said Tonee had that artist spirit and was always inspired. She loved to create and dance. Tonee worked full-time as a metal fabricator at Studebaker Metals in Braddock. She also taught ceramics at the Braddock Carnegie Library. On Monday, December 30th, 2019, Tonee stopped at Dobra Tea on Murray Avenue in Pittsburgh's Squirrel Hill neighborhood. An employee remembered her coming inside, having some tea, and leaving a short time later. It was around 6:00 p.m. From there, Tonee took a city bus toward Hazelwood, where she lived. A bus driver later reported seeing her get off at her usual stop at Hazelwood Avenue and Giddings Street. After that, there are no publicly reported sightings of Tonee. A few hours later, Tonee's sister Sydney said a man riding his bike across the Homestead Grays Bridge came across Tonee's purse on the pedestrian walkway. Inside were her phone, keys, water bottle, and diary. Nearby were a pair of shoes and a ceramic piece. But Tonee wasn't there. The man took the purse with him, and the following day, his father contacted Tonee's family. At first, that alone didn't immediately worry her loved ones. Sydney said Tonee had a habit of losing things, including her purse and keys. But on December 31st, Sydney went to Tonee's home and couldn't find her. Then she learned Tonee hadn't shown up for work that day. That's when Sydney knew something was wrong. Tonee's family reported her missing. On January 1st, 2020, Pittsburgh police asked the public for help finding her. Sydney also shared online that the family believed Tonee might be traveling along Interstate 80. She asked people in other states to keep an eye out for her. Her family and friends started searching, putting up flyers and sharing Tonee's picture. As the search continued, people involved later said Tonee's wallet was found separately from her other belongings near the Homestead Grays Bridge. They said it was underneath one of the missing person posters that had been put up for Tonee. That raised another question. How did her wallet end up under a poster that wasn't even there when she disappeared? Then on January 3rd, a tip from the public took the search somewhere else. The tip led Tonee's family to Linton Street in Pittsburgh's Hill District. They knocked on doors and handed out flyers. But the location itself didn't make sense to Tonee's family. Sydney said it wasn't somewhere her sister would normally go. As far as she knew, there was nothing that would have brought Tonee there. As the search for Tonee continued, her community showed up for her. On January 4th, more than 100 people gathered at the Braddock Carnegie Library, where Tonee had taught ceramics. Her family, friends, and people who knew her came together, hoping she would come home. On January 13th, Sydney brought people together again for a prayer circle and dance meditation. There was also the diary found inside Tonee's purse. Her family looked through it, hoping it might offer some clue about what had happened. Sydney said Tonee had written about feeling sad, but nothing publicly reported from that diary has ever explained where Tonee went. And there was still the question of the bridge. Tonee's belongings had been found there. The bus driver reported seeing Tonee get off her usual stop in Hazelwood. Publicly available reporting has never established that Tonee herself was on the Homestead Grays Bridge that night. So what happened between Tonee getting off that bus and her belongings turning up on the bridge? Tonee's family and friends continued finding ways to keep her story visible. A mural of Tonee was created in Braddock, and as the first anniversary of her disappearance approached, her loved ones held a silent walk through Hazelwood. By then, there had been possible sightings. Sydney said each one brought hope, but Tonee still hadn't appeared. In the years that followed, Pittsburgh police said they were still actively investigating Tonee's disappearance. Sydney said her family still had nothing telling them to stop searching, so they haven't. As of this recording, Tonee Marie Turner remains missing. If you know anything about Tonee's disappearance or where she may be, contact the Pittsburgh Police Missing Persons Unit. Contact details are included in the show notes. Let's keep sharing Tonee's story. For more episodes and case updates, follow Hunting for Answers. You can also find us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, or join our Facebook community. If there's a story you believe deserves attention, please reach out. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you for joining us for another episode. Until next time.
Hunting for Answers is a production of the Black Effect Podcast Network. For more podcasts from the Black Effect Podcast Network, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.